I think a trajectory of maybe three things. One is that we've been developing capacity and have long thought about like a concept of like a forest to frame type um, of house where or that's how we express it. But really just trying to find like the process between like being able to go on the land, select trees, harvest trees at a small scale, bring them to our own mill, and then being able to design and um, have carpenters in our own community to develop the houses. So that's been sort of a long, maybe up to 6 years in the making,
Mm.
since its sort of conception of trying to get to the point where we have the full capacity to do that, and we're sort of right on the cusp of doing that. So a lot of my work and projects, I guess, is just trying to um, more or less free up space so that I can focus on like the gaps that I see. And I think this project was able to fill a couple of gaps in terms of, we haven't had a lot of investment in terms of the design. And I've had a couple of failed projects as well, early on, um, where I've sort of sought more expertise on trying to develop designs for the community. And I sort of reached out to Lorado, and then she got me in touch with John Bass, and it's honestly been like just about trying to have like a community perspective on how to develop a house that you know would have more of an iterative process, because I could go to an architect and I could ask them to design something based on a profile of this and that, but in the end they would just spit something out and you wouldn't have the dialogue along with it. So reaching out to John and being able to like build a project where he's able to listen, and then there's sort of that iterative process of like back and forth and trying to really discuss like you know the community needs or the community desires for a house project. I think the third one is just the coming out of the 2017 wildfires and realizing that most of our houses are quite vulnerable to fires, like whether they're built by logs or by stick frame, or have roofs that are susceptible to being caught on fire. We have grasslands that can catch on fire, and just trying to figure out between forestry and fires and climate change, like what we could do to sort of address, as we're getting to the point of like building houses, how can we address those issues and not have the fear of wildfires um, ripping through the community and burning houses down in the future. So yeah, so that was sort of the interjection of like three different sort of streams of um, alignment or of projects. And so when I was able to like explain what we were after, even then it was really, um, I think we were looking at most of our communities are mold, or have had mold in them. Like I would say almost 50% like have or had mold in them, and it seemed to be a reoccurring problem. So one of the features we tried to address even in the former project was around air quality. And I sort of don't say much because I think it's a kind of a given in a way. Like there's houses that they haven't even had the proper ventilation systems or heating that has been designed properly so that there's uh, circulation and flow, and um, yeah, even the placement of windows and doors and everything hasn't really been thought of. So for me, like I think in the back of my mind, it's always been, um, at the forefront of having a house that's, adaptable to more a cultural lifestyle, where I think a lot of people have, some of it is like overcrowding and just conditions that aren't suitable for um, families and people in the community, but some of them are just lifestyle things, like people having tea or soup cooking, and you've got all that extra moisture in the air. But yeah, I think John was really meticulous on doing things right. Like, I think he's probably conscious of like how a project can go wrong, and so yeah, I think he was really excited to work with the community, but he was also, um, one example is like he actually wanted to see and feel the community. Like, he actually wanted to be there, see it, see what our houses look like, see what people are actively doing in our community. Um, Sort of more so like how do people utilize their homes, even on a landscape level or outside of the actual house. So he wanted to see that before he had really even like started much work on it. And so the first engagement was really just highlighting the work that he's done with the different First Nations that he's worked with. So outlining his projects, and then I don't think he wanted to come with any preconceived ideas. So it really was starting from scratch. I mean, I shared the AO project with him, and some of the work that we were doing, around other economic development or housing initiatives. But I, yeah, for him, he wanted to do it from scratch. And then I think we failed at a couple attempts to try to get funding to sort of focus on a particular project. But he was pretty, he's pretty persistent on trying to continue to develop a project. So he brought a student on. I think her name was Marion Jelena, and um, she was able to do some of the preliminary designs for the project. Um, so I think we mapped out almost like 6 to 8 different like kind of options. And what I was looking for at the beginning was sort of, or at least what I thought would be useful, is at least um, drawing things that would look at sort of like a charade of like 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom, and sort of kind of give people a concept to work with in their minds. And just based on his observations and Marion's observations of the community, and taking on some of our previous work on, yeah, sort of how we've tried to engage the community around what they would be expecting. And I think we worked on also a survey as well. So we were sort of like, I think what he wanted to find useful out of the survey was just like, just more or less any baseline knowledge, I guess, from the community perspective on what they would be expecting from housing. So yeah, we've been able to sort of, yeah, work with um, a small amount, and then sort of like work it into an actual project. Um, because at the nation level, we've got like a huge investment from the federal government of over $20 million for housing renovations and new housing, and to develop a long-term, like at least a 10-year plan for how we want to develop housing initiatives. But I think it's also built on trying to develop a larger housing authority and trying to build just more capacity within the communities to address housing as more of a business model. And yeah, and trying to secure and procure as much as the work and economy as we can around housing. Because I work on the new housing applications, I know that there's probably a demand for about 20 or 30 houses in the community. It's fairly high, but it's also very like it's a challenging thing to like think of the growth of housing because you end up having to think of infrastructure and economy at the same time.
Right.
So yeah, it's almost like you can't just focus on putting a bunch of um, you know houses down or a bunch of trailers down and like have the housing needs figured out. It's and I think everyone's kind of conscious of that. Like how do we and I think that's a lot of the eco-trust role is really trying to like develop a systems approach to um, of thinking about like homeland to governance um, to the economy and building a whole education and capacity building piece around it. I think down the road, I would like to be in a position where we are developing our own designs and aesthetic for the region in a way, because I think our climate is much different than many other places.
Right.